Don't come to the family reunion, Dad texted. Maria's boyfriend is a state senator. We have to impress him. I replied, fine. That night at the country club fundraiser, the senator was led to the head table. He froze when he saw who he'd be dining with. He started screaming because, imagine getting disinvited from your own family reunion, not because you did something wrong, but because you were simply you. And then imagine discovering the man your sister was engaged to, the one your family desperately needed to impress, was the ex-husband you divorced over a decade ago. Yeah, my world imploded that Tuesday. Main story. It all started with a text glowing on my screen in my quiet downtown office. Just as I was deep into reviewing case files, it arrived, dripping with casual cruelty. Don't come to the family reunion this weekend. Maria's boyfriend is a state senator. We need to impress him. You understand. No question mark, just a cold, dismissive statement assuming my compliance. Maria, my younger sister by 3 years, had always been a master manipulator. Growing up, she perfected the art of playing the victim. I'd watched her cry her way out of consequences, more times than I could count. When she totaled Dad's car at 17, she somehow convinced them it was my fault for not warning her about icy roads, even though I was away at college, miles from home.
It was always like that.
Then my phone buzzed again. This time, Mom. Your father's right, sweetheart. This is really important for Maria's future. Senator Bradford is very influential. We can't risk anything going wrong. I just stared at both messages. The assumption that I'd embarrass them, that I was some kind of liability, stung worse than the actual disinvitation. After everything I'd accomplished, they still saw me as the problematic child who didn't fit their picture of success. Okay, I typed back to Dad. Just that one word. It was short, but it carried the weight of years of similar dismissals. The graduation they'd missed because Maria had a dance recital. The promotion celebration they'd skipped because my sister needed help moving into her third apartment that year. My achievements were always footnotes to Maria's dramas. Always.
Just then my office phone rang.
It was Veronica from the Hospital Foundation. Dr. Chambers, we're finalizing the seating chart for Saturday's fundraiser. You're at the head table as our keynote speaker. Is there anything you need? Saturday. The very same night as my uninvited family reunion. Everything's perfect, I heard myself say, a strange calm washing over me. I'm looking forward to it. The Children's Hospital Foundation Gala was the biggest charitable event of the season. I was invited to speak about the mobile clinic program I developed, which brought pediatric care to underserved communities across the state. That program had treated over 5,000 children in its first year. Major donors were flying in from 3 states to attend. I'd mentioned the gala to my parents months ago. Of course. They just nodded absently, far more interested in Maria's new, very important in politics relationship. Wednesday brought another text, this time from Maria herself. Mom said you're not coming this weekend.
Good.
Bradford's people are super strict about optics. No offense, but your whole activist doctor thing doesn't really fit the image we're going for. My activist doctor thing. That's what she called running free clinics in neighborhoods most people pretended didn't exist. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The anger was a burning lump in my throat. Thursday afternoon, my colleague Thomas stopped by my office, leaning against my doorframe. Ready for your big speech? The foundation board is thrilled you agreed to speak. They're expecting over 300 people. I'm ready, I assured him, trying to sound confident. He leaned in conspiratorially. You know Senator Bradford will be there, right? He's receiving some civic leadership award before your keynote. My hand froze on the keyboard. Bradford? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Yeah, State Senator Kenneth Bradford. The guy's been making noise about running for Congress. Foundation wanted someone with political pull to draw the corporate donors. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled up the foundation's event page. There it was, Kenneth Bradford's photo, professionally lit, smiling beside his biography. 38 years old, graduate of Columbia Law School, rising star in state politics, recently engaged. The room felt suddenly, suffocatingly small. You okay? Thomas asked, noticing my silence. Fine, I managed, pushing away a wave of nausea. Just reviewing my notes. After he left, I sat very still. Then, with a chilling certainty, I opened a new browser tab and searched for recent news about the senator. The third result showed a photo from a charity event last month. Kenneth Bradford, standing with his arm around a familiar blonde woman. Maria. The caption identified her as his fiancée. Not just girlfriend. Fiancée. My stomach plummeted. I spent the next hour reading everything I could find. The engagement had been announced 6 weeks ago at a political dinner. Maria had quit her job as an event coordinator to focus on Kenneth's campaign full-time. She'd been quoted in multiple articles about her excitement at being part of something bigger than herself. And my parents? They were photographed at the engagement party, beaming with pride, Dad's arm around Maria, Kenneth's parents beside them. One article specifically mentioned how Kenneth's family had immediately welcomed his future bride. I scrolled through Maria's social media. Post after post showed her at campaign events, charity dinners, political rallies. She'd completely remade herself into the perfect politician's wife. The captions were full of hashtags about public service and making a difference. The irony burned. Maria, who had never shown interest in anything beyond her own comfort, was now positioning herself as a champion of community engagement. Meanwhile, I'd spent 15 years actually doing the work, and my own family had deemed me too embarrassing to acknowledge. I even found a video from a recent town hall where Kenneth discussed healthcare policy. Maria sat in the front row, nodding along like a seasoned pro. The comments section praised her supportive presence and called them a power couple. My hands shook slightly as I closed the laptop. Kenneth and I had divorced 12 years ago, but the memories rushed back with unexpected clarity. We'd met in college, both idealistic, both determined to change the world. He wanted to reform the system from within, through politics. I wanted to help people directly through medicine. For a while, we believed we could do both. We married young, full of plans and passion. But medical school consumed my time and energy. Kenneth's law school and subsequent political ambitions consumed his. We'd grown in different directions, wanting fundamentally different lives. The divorce had been civil. No screaming matches, no betrayals, just two people acknowledging they'd become incompatible. He wanted a partner who could attend every fundraiser, remember every donor's name, and smile through endless political dinners. I wanted to work in emergency rooms and free clinics, coming home exhausted and covered in other people's suffering. We signed the papers and went our separate ways. I threw myself into my residency and later into building the mobile clinic program. Kenneth climbed the political ladder, just as he'd always
Planned.
I hadn't thought about him in years. And now he was engaged to my sister, and my parents were so invested in this relationship that they'd rather exclude me than risk any awkwardness. My office phone rang again. Veronica. Dr. Chambers, I wanted to confirm your dietary preferences for Saturday and let you know we finalized the program. You'll speak right after Senator Bradford receives his award. We're expecting some great energy in the room. That sounds perfect, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling in my head. Oh, and we're also arranging some media coverage, she added. A few local news outlets want to cover the event, especially your keynote. The mobile clinic program has gotten so much positive attention lately. Media coverage, of course. Whatever you think is best, I told her, trying to keep my composure. After we hung up, I walked to the window. The city stretched out below, full of people going about their lives, utterly unaware of the small dramas playing out in offices and homes, and in family text chains. I could withdraw from speaking, claim a sudden illness or a family emergency. Let Maria have her perfect night with her senator fiancé and our proud parents. The old me, the version who'd learned to make herself smaller to avoid conflict, who'd accepted crumbs of attention and called enough, that version might have done exactly that. Midway subscribe line, by the way, if you're still with me, you know things are about to get even crazier. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories like this are coming your way. Seriously, you don't want to miss what happens next. Main story continued, but I'd spent 15 years building something real. The mobile clinic program had started with one van and a volunteer nurse. Now we had 4 fully equipped vehicles, a staff of 12 medical professionals, and partnerships with 3 hospitals. We provided over 40,000 patient visits to communities that had been medically underserved for generations. Children had better lives because of my work. Families had access to care they'd never had before. I'd published research papers on mobile healthcare delivery that were being used to develop similar programs in other states. Why should I hide that? Why should I make myself invisible just because my presence might create uncomfortable questions for my sister and her fiancé? Friday morning brought another text from my father. Your mother is very upset. This weekend is important for our family's future. I hope you'll reconsider and support your sister. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on silence. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder. At the Parkside Clinic that afternoon, I treated a teenager named Jasmine who'd been having severe headaches. The examination revealed dangerously high blood pressure, something that should have been caught years ago if she'd had regular access to healthcare. Am I going to die? She asked, trying to sound brave. No, I assured her. But we need to get you on medication and monitor this carefully. Can your mom bring you back next week? Her mother, sitting in the corner, nodded vigorously. We'll be here. Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. Walking out to my car later, I thought about the stark contrast. Here was a family genuinely grateful for basic medical care. Meanwhile, my own family couldn't see past their social aspirations long enough to recognize the value of what I'd built. The security guard, an older man named Raymond who'd worked at the community center for 20 years, waved as I passed. You heading to that big fancy event tomorrow, Dr. Chambers? He asked. How did you know about that? I grinned. He chuckled. My wife follows the hospital foundation. She's been telling everyone about you speaking. Real proud of you, she is. Says you're finally getting recognized proper. Thank you, Raymond. That means a lot. You deserve it, he said firmly. All the good you do around here. About time people with money noticed. I drove home thinking about his words. People with money would be at the gala. People with influence and connections. People who could expand a mobile clinic program beyond what I'd ever imagined possible. That's what Saturday was really about. Not my family drama or my ex-husband's political career, but the opportunity to secure resources for communities that desperately needed them. Saturday morning, I went for a run before the sun came up. The streets were quiet, just me and the rhythmic sound of my footsteps. I thought about my keynote speech, mentally reviewing the stories I planned to share. Marcus, the 12-year-old whose soccer dreams had nearly ended because his family couldn't afford treatment for his sports injury. We'd connected him with an orthopedic specialist who donated his time, and now Marcus was playing on a competitive team with a real shot at a college scholarship. The Rodriguez family, where 3 generations lived in a 2-bedroom apartment and no one had seen a dentist in 5 years. Our mobile clinic had partnered with a dental program, and now the kids were getting the care they needed. Story after story of real people whose lives had genuinely improved because we'd shown up and refused to accept that healthcare should be conditional on income or zip code. That's what I needed to focus on. Not the revenge fantasy playing out in my head, but the actual mission that had driven me for 15 years. Back home, I showered and ate a light breakfast. My phone showed 6 missed calls from Maria and 4 from my mother. I'd see whatever messages they left after the gala. Choosing my dress took longer than expected. The navy one was professional and appropriate, but there was also a deep burgundy dress I'd bought months ago and never worn. More striking, more memorable. I chose the burgundy. My hair went up in a simple but elegant style. Minimal jewelry, just the pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. She'd been a nurse, one of the first in her generation to attend college. She would have understood what I was trying to build. Looking at my reflection, I barely recognized myself. Not because of the dress or hair, but because of the expression on my face. Determined, unapologetic, ready. The drive to the country club felt surreal. I'd been here once before, years ago, for a medical conference. The place stripped old money and carefully maintained exclusivity. I wondered if Maria had told Kenneth about her family. Had she mentioned having a sister, or had she created a carefully edited version of her life, leaving out the parts that didn't fit her new political image? Arriving early gave me time to center myself. The preparation room was quiet, just a few volunteers arranging materials. I reviewed my notes one final time, though I'd long since memorized every word. I saw a folded program on a table. It had a short bio for Kenneth, mentioning his fiancée. They'd met at a political fundraiser where Maria worked as an event coordinator. Whirlwind romance, plans for a spring wedding. Bradford's campaign manager called her the perfect political partner. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mom. We're having the reunion at the Riverside Country Club. Kenneth's parents are members, and they arranged everything. Please don't make this difficult. The Riverside Country Club, the same one where the foundation gala was being held. I walked to the window and looked out over the city. 15 years ago, I'd been a scholarship student working 3 jobs to get through medical school. My parents had offered minimal support, preferring to fund Maria's liberal arts degree and her subsequent finding herself, period, in Europe. When I'd opened my first free clinic in a neighborhood supporters called Brave for Serving, my father had asked why I was wasting my education on people who wouldn't appreciate it. My mother had worried what their friends would think. Maria had never visited any of my clinics. She'd never asked about my work beyond superficial questions she'd forget the answers to immediately. But I was the one who didn't fit their image. Saturday evening arrived with clear skies. I dressed carefully in the burgundy dress. My speech was memorized, though I brought notes as backup. The Riverside Country Club glowed, with white lights strung through the trees lining the circular drive. Valets hustled between arriving cars. I could see the ballroom through the tall windows, already filling with guests in formal attire. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one final time before stepping out. The foundation had reserved a preparation room for speakers and award recipients. I headed there first, going over my talking points mentally, while volunteers rushed past with last-minute preparations. Veronica found me, her expression slightly harried. Dr. Chambers, thank you for being early. Senator Bradford just arrived. Would you like to meet him before the ceremony? That won't be necessary, I said smoothly, a tiny thrill running through me. I'm sure he's busy. She nodded and hurried off to handle another crisis. The program was straightforward. Cocktail hour, followed by dinner. Bradford would receive his award and give remarks. Then I would deliver the keynote about the mobile clinic program. The foundation director had asked me to keep it to 20 minutes, but to feel free to share patient stories that illustrated the program's impact. I had plenty of those. At 7 o'clock, the ballroom doors opened for seating. I made my way to the head table, positioned on a raised platform at the front of the room. My place card sat between the foundation president and one of the major donors. The ballroom filled quickly. Round tables draped in white linen surrounded the dance floor. Centerpieces of white roses and candles created an elegant atmosphere. A string quartet played softly in the corner. I recognized several faces from the medical community and donor circles. People waved or nodded as they found their seats. Then I saw them. My parents. They entered through the main doors, Maria between them. My father wore his best suit. My mother had clearly spent hours at the salon. Maria looked stunning in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. They were laughing at something, completely at ease. Behind them walked Kenneth Bradford, perfectly polished in a tailored tuxedo. They made their way through the crowd, stopping to shake hands and exchange pleasantries. Several people clearly recognized the senator. He had that politician's gift for making everyone feel like the most important person in the room. I watched them approach the head table area. A volunteer checked their names against the seating chart. The volunteer pointed toward the head table. I saw the exact moment my mother's gaze swept the platform and landed on me. Her smile froze. She grabbed my father's arm, her grip tight enough that he turned to look at her in confusion. She leaned close and whispered something. His eyes widened, searching the head table until he found me sitting calmly, sipping my water. Maria was still talking to someone, oblivious to her parents' reaction. The volunteer gestured again, indicating their assigned seats. The head table, where all the VIPs and honored guests would sit. Because, of course, the senator receiving an award would sit at the head table, right where his fiancé's family would join him. My father's face had gone pale. My mother looked like she might faint. They couldn't make a scene. Not here. Not with Senator Bradford's reputation on the line and 300 influential guests watching. The volunteers started leading them to the table. Maria finally noticed her parents' strange behavior. She followed their line of sight to where I sat. Her mouth opened in shock. Senator Bradford, still shaking hands with someone, remained unaware of the growing crisis. My parents reached the table first. Dad's hand shook slightly as he pulled out Mom's chair. She sat down mechanically, her eyes never leaving my face. "Hello, Mother," I said pleasantly, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside. "Dad, you both look wonderful." My father's jaw worked, but no sound came out. Maria arrived next, practically dragging Kenneth by the hand. She leaned in close to whisper urgently to him, but he was focused on greeting the foundation president. "Senator Bradford," the president said warmly. "We're so honored to have you. Please sit here, between Dr. Chambers and Mr. Peterson." The foundation president gestured to the empty seat, placing Kenneth right between me and one of the major donors. Maria and my parents would be seated on the opposite side of the table, but still close enough to witness everything. Kenneth turned toward me with his practiced political smile. The smile died. Every trace of color drained from his face. He stood completely motionless, staring at me like I was a ghost. "Kenneth?" Maria tugged his arm, her voice edged with confusion. "Are you okay?" He didn't respond, didn't blink, just stared. I met his gaze calmly, my expression neutral. The foundation president looked between us, confused by the sudden tension. "Have you two met?" she asked cheerfully. Kenneth's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He started, his voice barely above a whisper. Maria's eyes darted between us, her confusion rapidly transforming into suspicion. "How do you know each other?" she demanded. The string quartet had stopped playing. Nearby tables had begun noticing the scene unfolding at the head table. Kenneth looked like he might be sick. His perfect politician's composure had completely shattered. My mother made a small, desperate sound. I remained seated, completely composed, and waited. "Tell her," I said quietly to Kenneth, my voice clear and steady. "Tell your fiancé how we know each other." His face had gone from pale to gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He stammered. Maria grabbed his arm harder. "Kenneth, what is she talking about?" The ballroom had gone quiet. 300 people waited. Kenneth's hands trembled. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "We were married." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Maria's grip on his arm loosened. "What?" 15 years ago, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet ballroom. "We were married for 3 years before he decided politics was more important than our relationship." My mother made a choking sound. Kenneth seemed to have lost the ability to speak again. "You're divorced?" Maria's voice had risen to a near shriek. "Yes," I confirmed. The divorce was finalized 12 years ago. I could see people at nearby tables leaning in, not even pretending they weren't listening. Several had their phones out. Maria turned on me, her face twisted with rage. You knew. You knew all along and you didn't tell me. I didn't know you were dating Kenneth until yesterday, I replied calmly. You never mentioned his name. Our parents only said you were seeing a state senator. My father found his voice. This is inappropriate. We should discuss this privately. Should we? I asked, my gaze piercing. The way you discussed uninviting me from the family reunion? Privately? By text message? Because I didn't fit the image you wanted to project. Mom's face flushed red. That's not. We didn't mean. You told me not to come because I'd embarrass you. I continued, cutting her off. Because my activist Dr. Thing didn't fit the political image you were cultivating. Several gasps rippled through the nearby tables. Kenneth finally seemed to recover his voice. Jennifer, please. This isn't the time or place. Isn't it? I stood slowly, every eye in the room on me. This seems like exactly the time and place. You're receiving an award for civic leadership. I'm giving a speech about bringing healthcare to underserved communities. Quite the coincidence. Maria's eyes were wild. This is sabotage. You planned this. I planned nothing, I said. I was invited to speak here months ago, long before you started dating Kenneth. You can check with the foundation if you don't believe me. The foundation president nodded mutely, clearly overwhelmed by the drama unfolding at her own gala. But you knew he'd be here. Maria accused. I found out Thursday, I admit it. I could have withdrawn, yes. But why should I? I earned this speaking invitation through my work. I've treated over 5,000 children through the mobile clinic program. I've built something that matters. Why should I hide? Because my ex-husband happens to be receiving an award at the same event. Kenneth's political instincts finally kicked in. He turned to the foundation president with a strange smile. I apologize for this disruption. Perhaps it would be best if I step down from receiving the award tonight, given the circumstances. No need. I interrupted, my voice firm. Your award has nothing to do with me. You've done good work on the education committee. You deserve recognition for that. He looked uncertain, trapped between political calculation and personal discomfort. Maria wasn't finished. You're enjoying this. You wanted to humiliate us. I wanted to give a speech about providing healthcare to children who need it. I corrected, my eyes unwavering. Your humiliation is entirely self-inflicted. My mother stood abruptly. Maria, Kenneth, we should leave. This is clearly a mistake. Sit down, Helen, I said, my voice coming out harder than I'd intended. You're making a scene? She froze, shocked. I'd never used that tone with my parents before. You spent my entire life making me feel like I wasn't good enough. I continued, the words now tumbling out, years of resentment fueling them. Not pretty enough, not charming enough, not interested in the right things. You funded Maria's extended adolescence while I worked myself half to death getting through medical school. You've missed every important moment in my career because something to do with Maria always took priority. Dad reached for Mom's hand, but I wasn't finished. Isn't it? When I got married, you didn't come to the wedding because it was the same weekend as Maria's friend's destination bachelorette party. When I opened my first clinic, you asked why I was wasting time on charity work instead of building a real practice. And now, when I'm being honored for work that's changed thousands of lives, you try to keep me away because I might embarrass you in front of Maria's important boyfriend. Tears streamed down my mother's face, but I couldn't stop. The irony is that Kenneth and I actually parted on decent terms. We wanted different things. He wanted political advancement and a wife who'd host fundraisers and smile for cameras. I wanted to actually help people. We recognized we weren't compatible and moved on like adults. I turned to Kenneth, who looked like he wished the floor would swallow him whole. I never spoke badly about you after the divorce. Never tried to damage your reputation or career. I moved on with my life and built something I'm proud of. I know, he said quietly, his voice raspy. I followed your work. The mobile clinic program is remarkable. Maria whirled on him. You knew about this? You knew she was doing this, and you never told me. I didn't know she was your sister, he protested, looking genuinely baffled. You never mentioned your sister was a doctor. You only talked about how she was difficult and how your parents had to manage her expectations. The betrayal on Maria's face would have been satisfying if it wasn't so pathetic. You described her exactly how you've always been, Dad said weakly, the fight gone from his voice. Difficult. Uncompromising. Yes, I agreed, a sharp edge to my tone. I'm very difficult about things like medical ethics and treating patients with dignity. I'm extremely uncompromising about providing quality healthcare regardless of someone's ability to pay. These are such terrible character flaws. The sarcasm landed heavily. Veronica appeared at my elbow, her expression pained. Dr. Chambers, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we need to make a decision about the program. We proceed as planned, I said firmly. Senator Bradford will receive his award and give his remarks. Then I'll deliver my keynote. Unless the senator wishes to withdraw. All eyes turned to Kenneth. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Walk out and look guilty or stay and maintain dignity. I'll stay, he said. Jennifer is right. This is about the Foundation's work, not our personal history. Maria looked between us, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Finally, she grabbed her purse. I'm leaving, she announced. Kenneth, are you coming with me? He hesitated just long enough to make his choice clear. I think I should stay, he said carefully. This is an important event for my campaign. Maria's face crumpled, then hardened. Fine, we're done. She stormed toward the exit, her silver gown swishing dramatically. My parents looked at each other, clearly torn. Go with her, I said tiredly. You always do. Mom opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. They followed Maria out of the ballroom. The silence that followed their departure was deafening. Then the Foundation president cleared her throat. Well, shall we begin the program? The rest of the evening proceeded with surreal normalcy. Kenneth received his award and gave a competent speech about education reform. He didn't look at me once during his remarks. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the podium and looked out at 300 faces watching me with undisguised fascination. I set aside my prepared notes. Good evening. I'm Dr. Jennifer Chambers, and I'm here to talk about why healthcare should never be conditional on status or image. I told them about Rosa, the 7-year-old with diabetes whose mother couldn't afford insulin. About Marcus, the teenager with a heart condition that went undiagnosed until our mobile clinic caught it during a routine screening. About the grandmother who cried when we treated her granddaughter's asthma because she'd been convinced no doctor would care about kids from their neighborhood. I talked for exactly 20 minutes about the real work of medicine, stripped of politics and prestige, and everything that didn't matter when a child needed help. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Kenneth was one of the first to stand. Afterward, donors surrounded me, business cards and promises of funding exchanged hands. The foundation president announced they'd exceeded their fundraising goal by 40%. A woman in an elegant black gown approached, introducing herself as Christine Wallace, director of a healthcare nonprofit based in Chicago. Dr. Chambers, your work is exactly what we've been trying to replicate in our region, she said. Would you be willing to consult with our team? We have funding, but we're struggling with implementation. I'd be happy to help, I said, taking her card. Another donor, an older gentleman who'd made his fortune in pharmaceuticals, shook my hand vigorously. My company has been looking for community healthcare initiatives to support, he said. Your mobile clinic model is brilliant. Let's schedule a meeting next week to discuss a potential partnership. The evening had shifted from personal drama to professional opportunity in the span of 20 minutes. This was what I'd come here for, what I'd worked toward for 15 years. Veronica found me in the crowd, her face flushed with excitement. Dr. Chambers, we have 3 journalists who want interviews. The local news station wants to feature the mobile clinic program on their evening broadcast next week, and the foundation board just approved doubling our support for your program. I felt dizzy with the sudden influx of good news. That's incredible. You earned it, she said warmly. That speech was the most powerful thing I've heard in 20 years of running these events. As the crowd thinned, I noticed my parents hadn't returned. Maria's dramatic exit had apparently taken them with it, just as I'd predicted. A young woman approached hesitantly. She looked to be in her mid-20s, dressed simply compared to the other guests. Dr. Chambers, I'm sorry to bother you, but I had to say thank you. For what? I asked, a little disoriented. I'm Sarah Mitchell. You treated my little brother at the Parkside Clinic 2 years ago. He had pneumonia, and my mom couldn't afford to take him to the emergency room. You saved his life. The memory came back. A frightened 6-year-old struggling to breathe. His mother near hysteria. We'd gotten him to the hospital just in time. How is he doing? I asked. He's great, healthy, and happy. My mom wanted me to tell you, if I ever saw you. Her eyes filled with tears. She says, you're an angel. I'm just a doctor doing my job, I mumbled. No, Sarah said firmly. You're more than that. You showed up when no one else would. That matters. After she left, I stood alone for a moment, letting her words sink in. This was why the criticism from my family had always stung so deeply. They couldn't see what people like Sarah and her mother understood instinctively, that showing up for people who'd been overlooked was worth more than any country club membership or political connection. A server offered me champagne from a passing tray. I took a glass and moved toward the terrace doors, needing air and a moment to process everything. The terrace overlooked the golf course, dark now, except for strategically placed lights along the paths. The night air was cool and welcome after the warmth of the crowded ballroom. Jennifer. I turned to find Kenneth standing in the doorway. That was a powerful speech, he said. Thank you. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. I really didn't know Maria was your sister, he said finally. She never talked about you much. I'm not surprised. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About tonight. About how things ended between us. I studied him. He'd aged well, still handsome in that polished political way. But the passion I'd once loved was gone, replaced by calculated ambition. We were young, I said. We wanted different things. It happens. You've done incredible work, he said genuinely. The mobile clinic program is everything you dreamed about back when we were together. Yes, I agreed. It is. He shifted his weight. I should probably check on Maria. Try to explain. Good luck with that. He smiled ruefully. Yeah, I'll need it. He paused. She really didn't tell you about me? She never mentioned your name, just that she was dating an important senator her parents wanted to impress, and you had no idea until Thursday afternoon. He shook his head. What are the odds in a state this size? Higher than you'd think. I gathered my things. Congratulations on your award, Kenneth. The education work really is good. Thank you. And Jennifer, your parents were wrong. You've never been the embarrassment they treated you as. It was probably the kindest thing he'd said to me in 15 years. I drove home through quiet streets, exhausted but oddly peaceful. My phone had 17 missed calls and 34 text messages, all from my family. I deleted them without reading. Sunday morning brought a knock on my door. I opened it to find my mother standing on the porch, her eyes red from crying. Can we talk? She asked. I let her in. We sat in my living room, surrounded by medical journals and photos from clinic events. She looked around at my life like she was seeing it for the first time. I owe you an apology, she said finally, her voice raw. Yes, I agreed softly. You do. She twisted her hands in her lap. We thought we were protecting Maria. She's always been more fragile than you, more sensitive. She's been enabled. I corrected gently. There's a difference. Mom flinched but didn't argue. You're right. We made excuses for her and expected you to just manage because you were stronger. Being strong doesn't mean I didn't need support, I said, a faint ache in my chest. I know. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I watched you work yourself to exhaustion through medical school. I saw you sacrifice everything for your career. And instead of being proud, I worried what people would think about you working in those neighborhoods. Why? I asked, needing to understand. Why did you care more about appearances than about the actual good I was doing? She was quiet for a long moment, because it was easier. Easier to focus on Maria's simple problems than to admit I didn't understand your complicated ones. Easier to attend her parties than to face the reality of the suffering you dealt with every day. It was more honesty than I'd expected. Maria's not speaking to any of us, she continued. She blames everyone but herself for what happened. Kenneth tried to call her yesterday. She blocked his number. That's between them, I said. Your father wants to apologize too. He's just too proud to come himself. I thought about my father's face when he realized I was at the gala. The shame mixed with anger. I don't need his apology right now. I need space. Mom nodded. I understand. But please know that watching you speak last night, hearing what you've accomplished, I was proud. Genuinely proud. And ashamed that I tried to keep you away. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. The clinic in Parkside, she said hesitantly. Could I volunteer there? Nothing medical, just administrative work or whatever you need. I searched her face for signs of performance or manipulation. Found only genuine uncertainty. Call the clinic coordinator tomorrow, I said. They'll tell you what's needed. After she left, I made coffee and sat on my balcony, watching the city wake up. My phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. Saw the video from last night. You're trending on medical Twitter. Also, 3 new donors contacted the foundation because of your speech. You're a rock star. I smiled and set the phone aside. Ending. The family reunion I'd been uninvited from had imploded spectacularly. Kenneth Bradford's political campaign would recover, but his relationship with Maria wouldn't. My parents were facing uncomfortable truths about their parenting choices, and I'd secured funding to expand the mobile clinic program to 2 more neighborhoods. Some revenge, you see, is served cold. Some is served at black tie fundraisers, in front of 300 witnesses. Either way, it tastes like justice. Call to action. I wouldn't trade what I do for anything. But what about you? Have you ever had a moment where you had to choose between family expectations and your own truth? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.